Welcome everyone to another session of answer writing practice discussion. As you know, the Vajiram's initiative of answer writing practice, you get three questions from Monday to Friday. Questions are based on the schedule that is uploaded in the portal, so do check it out. In today's session, we are going to discuss questions from GS2, International Relations. We are going to be talking about two questions specifically from the subtopic of bilateral, regional and global groupings and agreements involving India and or affecting India's interest. We'll be also talking about a question from important international institutions, agencies and fora, the structure and mandate. And one question would be from current affairs. So let us see the overview of the questions. The very first question is about SAARC. Now as we know that SAARC is a regional grouping, has certain kind of challenges. There are certain other organizations like BIMSTEC that are coming up and giving certain kind of alternatives to SAARC. So we will deal with that topic in this question. The second question is about World Trade Organization. Over here, we will look at the significances as well as certain challenges with respect to WTO. And the third is a current affair based question. Over here, we will talk about digital public infrastructure. We will see the question how it's a bedrock for digitally empowered society, certain significances as well as challenges. So let us start with the very first question. Question number 1. SAARC is often termed as a jammed vehicle. Comment. In the light of its perceived shortcomings, it is feasible for BIMSTEC to replace SAARC as a far more effective regional organization in South Asia. So over here, you have to understand different parts of the question. Firstly, we will deal with how SAARC is often termed as jammed vehicle. In the second, we will talk about how BIMSTEC has certain kind of importance and how it can bridge the shortcomings of SAARC. So it's a 10-marker question, so we'll divide the body likewise. Let's start with the introduction. Over here, you can give a brief about SAARC, its aim and its objective. As we know, SAARC was established in 1985 and we have 8 nations of South Asia, and basically the aim and the objective of SAARC to ensure regional integration as well as development. So that is something that you can introduce in the beginning. Then coming to body 1, you will deal with SAARC, a jammed vehicle. Over here, you will talk about the shortcomings of SAARC. The very first shortcoming is India-Pakistan relationship. As we know that because of certain kind of support of terror outfits from Pakistan, India has witnessed lots of acts of terrorism. And because of such kind of impact, India-Pakistan relationship has deteriorated. And this has directly as well as indirectly impacted the functioning of SAARC. Second, trade issue. As we know that all the countries, nations of South Asia which are part of SAARC, they are developing countries. And because of that kind of nature, the kind of economical activities they are involved are in competitive nature. Cheap labor, cheap raw material. So instead of cooperating or collaborating, their economy are in competing nature. So trade issue appears. The third is lack of connectivity. Due to difficult terrain, lack of infrastructure, we have witnessed that how connectivity is also a bigger issue for poor functioning of SAARC. Fourth is limitation in SAFTA. So we have witnessed that South Asian Free Trade Agreement was signed. However, it has not realized its ultimate potential. The trade is still stunted and that impacts the overall functioning of SAARC as well. Then the last is lack of consensus. Not just India-Pakistan's relationship, multiple nations that are part of SAARC, they also have certain degree of conflict. And because of that, consensus is not achieved with respect to many agreements. So those are the limitations. Now let us see why BIMSTEC plays important role over here. Now BIMSTEC is part of the 7 nations. Instead of Pakistan, Maldives and Afghanistan, we have Thailand and Myanmar. So it is tilting towards east. So let's see what are the importance of BIMSTEC. Firstly, all the nation of BIMSTEC, they have economic stability. Most of them are growing at around 6% growth of GDP per year. Second is natural resources. They all have access to natural resources, be it hydrocarbon, or you can also talk about hydropower. So that is something which is common and important for all the members. The third is connectivity. So we have seen multiple initiatives within these nations of BIMSTEC. There are initiatives like Kalanandan multimodal projects and all. So that has definitely impacted and resulted in positive tilt towards connectivity. The fourth is bridging South and Southeast Asia. As some of the members are from ASEAN as well, that kind of interlinking has ensured that South Asian countries are also integrating with ASEAN nations. And the last is important for Northeast development. We have seen how India is pursuing Look-East, Act-East policy to ensure that Northeastern regions are also developed, and in that scenario, BIMSTEC plays very crucial role. So those are the significance of BIMSTEC. Now let us see, can BIMSTEC replace SAARC? So firstly, we will talk about BIMSTEC effectiveness. As we have witnessed that BIMSTEC was established in 1997 through Bangkok Agreement. So it is pretty new organization, fairly new organization, and to understand its effectiveness, we must take some more time period, gather more proof points so that we can compare SAARC along with BIMSTEC. Second is objectives of SAARC, the membership. That is different from BIMSTEC, and because of such kind of variance, they cannot be compared exactly. Third is common challenges in SAARC along with BIMSTEC. Both organizations are facing certain degrees of common challenges. We have seen that multiple projects like India-Myanmar-Thailand Highway, which was supposed to get over in 2015, is still not yet finished. So similar kind of infrastructure development project in SAARC are also witnessing delays. So those are the kind of challenges common to both. And lastly, Afghanistan's issue. We have seen rise of Taliban and again of augmenting terrorism in that region. Now BIMSTEC is not directly involved with Afghanistan. That limits India's reach towards resolving the issue of Afghanistan. Over here, SAARC plays crucial role. So these are the kind of points that you can integrate under such kind of heading. So let us go to the end and see what can we write in the conclusion. In the conclusion, you can talk about way ahead how SAARC as well as BIMSTEC, both the organization need certain degrees of reform. Especially for SAARC, we can talk about how there should be further engagement, there should be further understanding between different nations, capacity building, as well as people to people connect. Similarly for BIMSTEC, you can talk about and you can conclude the answer that how South Asian nation, or you can talk about how future is Asia, and you can connect the same with BIMSTEC and SAARC. So that is for question number 1. Now let us see the model answer and understand how can we integrate the same in our answer writing. So firstly, you can talk about the SAARC, the formation year, talk about the shortcomings of SAARC, like India-Pakistan issue, trade issue, right? We have seen that have similar trade in economic structures, cheap labor, low value commodity. Because of that, there is a lot of competition. And then there's lack of connectivity. We saw motor vehicle agreement of SAARC and it was stalled due to issues with different countries. Similarly, we can talk about other limitations. Post that, we can talk about importance of BIMSTEC, and the last we can talk about the feasibility of BIMSTEC replacing SAARC. And in the end, you can talk about the way forward with respect to both organization or either one and conclude your answer. So that's it for question number 1. Let's move to question number 2. Question number 2. Critically analyze the contemporary significance of the World Trade Organization in the light of its perceived failure to address the escalating trade tensions across the world. So over here, demand of the question is to give out the significance of World Trade Organization as well as what are the different challenges and what exactly can be done in the conclusion. So in the introduction, you can talk about the overview and functioning of WTO. Over here, you can talk about how it was established in 1995 through Marrakesh Treaty. You can also talk about what is the core objective. It's free and open trade at global level. So this is something that you can start in the introduction. In the body part, you can talk about the significance of WTO in the present day context. The first thing that you can talk about is specifically the objective, that is free, open and free international trade. Over here, you can talk about how different agreements of WTO have helped realized free and open international trade. So you can talk about agreement on agriculture and etc. In the second, you can talk about how it is helping to stimulate the global growth. Over here, you can talk about how WTO is ensuring that different types of barriers with respect to trade are eliminated, either tariff or non-tariff. So that is something you can talk in the second point. In the third point, you can talk about how WTO is promoting standardization. We have seen multiple initiatives of WTO like TRIPS, which is related to intellectual property, and thus how such kind of initiatives are ensuring that the entire global trade is standardized so that there is minimal degree of conflict. Fourth, global arbitrator. Over here, we have seen that how WTO has acted and played crucial role in ensuring whatever kind of grievances are there between two different members that are resolved through arbitrary process. So those are the significance of WTO in the present day context. You can write those 4 points and we can move to the next body, which is about challenges faced by WTO on various issues in the recent year. Firstly, you can talk about lack of transparency. We have seen that how different members have different kind of authority with respect to the preferential treatment. So that is something you can write over there. Second, you can talk about that recent trade wars between like China and USA. They are also distorting the global trade supply, as well as the significance of WTO over here is also under focus, how exactly it behaves, so that there is clear understanding that how power is tilted and all, so that you can talk about in trade war. Thirdly, agricultural issue. India has opposed developed nations policy with respect to agricultural subsidies and all. So that is something which recurringly developing nation has faced. And fourth is e-commerce and digital trade. WTO does not cover issues such as this, which are presently need of the hour, so that developing country can also get benefit out of the same. So overall, you can see how there are multiple challenges with respect to WTO. We have also seen that certain kind of definition issues are also there. WTO has not explicitly defined what is developing nation or developed nation and has kept it a little bit subjective in nature. Because of that, there is a lot of conflict regarding the same as well. So that is the challenges part. Now let us talk about the reforms required in the functioning of WTO. Now this is something in a 10-mark question you can either add in the conclusion, or you can create a small body and ensure how it can definitely help with your answer. Firstly, the dispute settlement body appointment process should be transparent and ensure that it's representative of every member's inspiration. Second, modernize WTO for digital trade and e-commerce. We saw how it was excluded from WTO's purview. However, the demand is that such kind of trade and e-commerce activities should also be considered under WTO. Third, empower developing countries in WTO. As we talked about how developed countries have hijacked and monopolized WTO, developing countries should also get equal pie so that they can participate in the activities of WTO and ensure that the idea or the objective of free and open international trade is sustained. So that is something that you can add in this body. Let's move to the conclusion. Over here, again, when you are talking about way ahead, you can talk about measures such as ensuring the inclusiveness nature as well as ensuring transparency and all. So that is something that you can write in the answer for WTO. Now let us see the model answer. and understand how can we inculcate the same in our answer writing. Firstly, you talk about the year as well as treaty under which WTO was established and its aim and objective. Then you talk about the significance. You substantiate each dimension or the argument with examples. Like for open and free international trade, we have agreement on agriculture. For promote standardization, we have TRIPS agreement. So you can use similar kind of examples in your answer writing as well. In the challenges, you talk about all the dimensions and you give explicit examples to ensure whatever argument you are presenting, they are substantiated. Then you can talk about the reforms and then you can conclude with way ahead. So this is question number 2. Let's move on to question number 3. Let's read the question together. Digital public infrastructure is the bedrock of digitally empowered society, narrowing the citizen technology gap. In this context, discuss the significance and challenges of DPI. As we have understood that DPI is now the future of digitally empowered society, in this question, we will be talking about certain significance of DPI along with substantiation and certain challenges that DPI presents along with substantiation. In the introduction, you can define DPI as they are digital networks through which services is provided either through government bodies or through private entities. So basically, they are bridges and they are connectors for the services. So that is something you can talk about in the DPI. You can also add certain kind of dimensions and graphs that what are the components of DPI. So you can augment your answer that way. In the body 1, you talk about the significance of DPI. The very first thing that you can add is economic growth. We have witnessed that how ease of doing business can be realized through inculcation of digital technologies and thus which can cater transparency along with effectiveness. So economic growth can be instigated through DPI. You can also talk about example of how MSME are taking leverage of Udyam portal to augment their capacity as well as their business. So that is economic growth. Second is how education can be impacted through DPI. We have seen initiatives like National Knowledge Project where multiple initiatives are under the same to ensure DPIs are utilized to ensure access and exposure of education. So that is for education. We have also seen how government services can be effective, can be made effective through DPI. We have seen portals like Umang for the same. Apart from that, we also have initiatives for healthcare. We have National Health Stack. Similarly, for agriculture, we have Agricultural Health Stack. So certain kind of specific sector-specific initiatives can also help realize the importance of DPI. We also have realized how financial inclusion have been achieved through the help of DPI. So this is something that you can add over here, right? So these are the significance of DPI. Now let us see what are the challenges of digital public infrastructure. In India, we have witnessed that as there is acute inequality, we also have witnessed because of the same digital divide. Not everyone is able to access digital tools and its subsidiary tools such as internet, mobile phones, access to computer. So because of certain kind of digital divide, we also have lack of infrastructure at remote regions. So digital divide kind of creates impediments to realize the potential of DPI. Then we have seen cyber security related issues. We have seen multiple instances of cyber security related events like ransomware attack and all that can compromise the entire database. At the same time, it can also create hurdles with respect to internal security. Third, privacy issues. We have seen in the recent current affairs that how CoWIN portal was hijacked and there were certain leakages in data that definitely and directly impacts the privacy of citizens. Fourth, we have seen infrastructure gaps. As we're talking about the digital divide, we have seen how the backward linkages, connectivity of electricity, internet, access to hardware, that kind of infrastructure gap also impedes the realization of DPI. And fifth is interoperability. Multiple agencies are collecting different data points. Now, because of certain kind of mismatch and issue of interoperability, those data points are not exactly able to be very helpful. So interoperability is also a big issue. And lastly, data quality. We have witnessed that just by collecting data, you cannot create certain kind of analysis or certain kind of insights. There has been a lot of noise data as well, which hinders the policymakers to understand and create policies. So issues of data can also be there. So that is something that you can write in the challenges. In the last part, you talk about way ahead. So how exactly we can solve issues. So you can exactly talk about the challenges. Like for digital divide, you ensure inclusion of not just physical infrastructure, but also access to internet as well as hardware. So that is something you can talk in the way ahead. Apart from that, you can also talk about how there should be different kind of cyber related protection to ensure DPI can ultimately reach its potential. So that is something that you can talk in the way ahead. And at the end, you can talk about it how India can realize not just 5 trillion by a few years, but can achieve at least $25 trillion by 2047. So that is something that you can talk about for the DPI in the conclusion. Let's see the model answer and see how we can use for our answer writing. In the introduction, you define DPI. You also give certain examples. The same you can also inculcate in the body as well. The significance, you give examples. In the model answer, there are multiple examples. You can selectively choose the example that whichever is appropriate for your answer writing. So these are the significance. In the challenges, again, we have multiple dimensions along with substantiation. So that is something you can add over there. And the last, you talk about different measures. And in the end, you can talk about how it can augment India's economic development. So this is the question number 3. So this is answer writing programs video discussion. Thank you very much.